Did you know that a cold is a house clean? That's what it is. It's a house clean. A cold is a house clean. And so 2 weeks ago, I had to go through a house clean. And I wasn't very happy about it. And I blew my nose a lot and I coughed up a lot of very interesting things. So whenever that happens, please rejoice. Because where were the things you coughed up before you coughed them up? That's right. That's right. And as a child, I had bronchitis a lot. And I realise now it's because I had an allergy to dairy. But you know, everyone drank cow's milk. And when I was a little girl, in the 50s, 60s, in primary school, we all had to drink a bottle of milk every morning. Oh, I would feel ill with this bottle of milk. You see, cow's milk's very good milk for baby calves. Got that? And there are some cultures that have been drinking dairy for a long time, and they have the enzymes in their gut that can break down the cow's milk. I have a friend who has an orphanage in Nakuru, Kenya, and they have a lot of babies coming in, you know, parents with AIDS that have died, and they give the baby soy milk and they do well. But they had some Maasai babies come in and the Maasai babies did not do well on the soy milk. Because you know, Maasai's drink milk, blood and meat. Mind you, they have other health problems and they don't live long lives, but they've got a body, and it's in their genes because they've been doing it so long, that's something that would probably just about kill me, that they function. So my friend's husband bought a cow, milked the cow and gave the Maasai babies cow's milk, and they thrived. So it is true that there are some people that have in their heritage that they can handle the dairy. But what I'm going to look at now is a germs-causing disease. Now notice what I began with. I began with telling you that the cold is a house clean. Have you noticed that when someone gets a cold and they cough on everyone, have you noticed that some get the cold and some don't? The ones that get the cold are the ones who are ready for a house clean. And if you give the body the right conditions, it'll house clean effectively, efficiently and well, and the person will be better after the cold, or stronger or cleaner than they were before. It was in 1940s the Common Cold Research Unit was set up in Salisbury, London, to find the cause and the cure of the common cold. After 40 years, they closed down in disgrace because of a total inability to find the cause and the cure of the common cold, because they never will. It's a house clean. Have you noticed when the situation that happened in the world over the last few years, have you noticed that this is the CDC figures, 99% of people that got COVID recovered? Did you know they're the CDC figures? And the ones that went down are the ones with pre-existing health conditions. In other words, it was really just the straw that broke the camel's back. So what are germs? Let's do an assessment of what a germ is. Microorganisms. Microorganisms are everywhere, and as the name implies, they're microscopic. You cannot see them with the naked eye. Microorganisms. Organism meaning living. And microorganisms are everywhere. They're in the air we're breathing. They're on every surface area. Microorganisms are in the human body. We have 100 trillion cells in the body, and there are 10 times the microorganisms in our body than cells. And in our gastrointestinal tract, that hollow tube that goes from the mouth to the other end, there are 10 times more microorganisms in the gastrointestinal tract than anywhere else in the body. And when the body's working well, those microorganisms are contributing to the proper running of the human body. In fact, if you were to kill every microorganism that was in the human body, you would kill the human body. Microorganisms are everywhere, but whenever cell damage happens, these microorganisms have the ability to change roles. I was talking to a microbiologist who did our program. He said, we call them the garbage collectors. So in America you call it trash, is that right? We call it garbage. So because I am in the US, I'll call it trash. The trash collectors. This is what they are. So whenever there's cell damage, you've always got some waste, and the trash collectors come and clean it up. Their name is bacteria. That's what it is. It's the trash collector. And so the more rubbish, the more waste, the more trash, the more bacteria. That's right. As the environment changes, these microorganisms now become the exterminators. So what's the name of the exterminators? They're all part of the cycle of life. They're the yeast. The bacteria. Sorry, we've done bacteria. Fungus. Oh, there's another name, and you might be familiar with this name, virus. You look at the functions or the properties of a virus, it's the same as the yeast and fungus. They need a host. As the environment changes, so do they. They now become the undertakers, and the undertakers take away dead things. The undertaker's name is mould. That's what mould is, that's what it does. Now, it's not long after the mould stage that the matter is brought back to dust. So we'll do a purple first. That's the function, is matter brought back to dust. It's called the cycle of life. And a basic law of science states nothing's created and nothing's destroyed, it just changes form. And what does the preacher say at the funeral? Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. What's he referring to? He's referring to Genesis 3:19, where the Bible says we come from dust, we go back to dust, we're dust. It's the cycle of life, or the carbon cycle. And the cycle of life states that nothing's created and nothing's destroyed, it just changes form. It's the cycle of life. And the germ theory that germs cause disease was made famous by Louis Pasteur. And Louis Pasteur was a contemporary at the time of Antoine Bouchon. And Antoine Bouchon, 6 times professor, this man, and yet most people have hardly heard of him because no one liked his theory. Everyone liked Pasteur's theory. Pasteur was a chemist and he was a socialite. And whenever he did experiments, he called the media. Can you trust anything that comes out of the media? If someone said to me, how can I protect myself against COVID in the last few years? I say, stop watching the news. Best protection. Antoine Bouchon, 6 times professor. He said, germs are born in us and off us. Disease is born in us and off us. You see, no one likes that theory. Everyone liked Pasteur's theory. It's not me, it's the germ. The germ jumped on me and made me sick. But that theory actually defies reason. So this is France, Pasteur, Bouchon. Let's go to England. Florence Nightingale. This is mid-1800s. When she read of Louis Pasteur's theory, she says, this is the theory of a man of a very unstable mind. And she says, and anyone who believes it is equally unstable. She believed, as Antoine Beauchamp, germs don't cause disease, they're the result. Can you see why they're there? Florence Nightingale, 1854. The British government asked her to go to Scutari. Let me draw Scutari for you. Scutari was the port where the wounded were being taken from the Crimean War. Here's the Black Sea, and here's Crimea. The British and the French were fighting the Russians. Not much has changed, has it? But the British and the French were fighting the Russians. The wounded were put into boats and sailed down the Black Sea to Scutari. And if they survived the battle, if they survived the trip, which sometimes was fairly horrific if there was a storm, if they happened to reach the hospital, 50% of the young men that got into that hospital were dying. A war correspondent from London came to report on the war effort. He was shocked at what he saw in that hospital. It was ex-Turkish army barracks. And there was just filth everywhere. So he went back to London and he wrote an article in the newspaper. Did we raise our young men to rot in this hospital? So very quickly the British government got Florence and 35 nurses to go to Scutari. When they arrived, the doctor said, "This is men's business, you're not coming in here." Now she knew her limitations as a woman in the mid-1800s, but she had a very wealthy father and he had friends in Parliament. She said, "We need a sanitary commission. Set up a sanitary commission." So a group of men to come and assess the situation. And this is what they found. They found that this hospital was built in a swamp. They found a dead horse in the swamp, and they found a dead dog in the swamp, and the men were drinking the water out of that swamp. I'm surprised the death rate wasn't 80%. Eesh. Florence found a young man in the wards who was still in his battle clothes 2 weeks after he'd been admitted. The doctors were not washing their hands between operations. They said, "We're already covered in blood. What's the diff?" Florence Nightingale also asked her father, who was very wealthy, for a shipload of clean linen, clean bandages, mattresses, scrubbing brushes, and a cook. You cannot heal without nourishment. We looked at that this morning. See, their food was big vats of water with bits of rotten meat in it. Incredible that anyone survived such conditions. There was raw sewage in the corridors. After 2 weeks, another shipload of wounded came in, 1,200 wounded men. The hospital was already overflowing. So the doctor said to Florence and her nurses, "All right, you can come in." And she got her nurses to start scrubbing, start cleaning. The Sanitary Commission quickly realised the problem. They got men to get rid of the dead dog and the dead horse. They started boiling the water. They got men to fix the plumbing so there was not raw sewage in the corridors. How come Florence knew and the doctors did not know these basic laws of hygiene? She read her Bible. And in the little book Ministry of Healing, there's a chapter on hygiene with the Israelites in the desert with Moses for 40 years. Do you know the only deaths in that camp were old age? And there were strict cleanliness rules. If you wanted to go to the bathroom, you had to go outside the camp. You had to dig a hole, bury it, and no one was to know you'd been there. If someone died in the camp, they were to be taken outside the camp, and again, a big hole dug. And the men that carried the dead person out of the camp could not go back into the camp for 3 days. They had to wash their clothes, they had to wash their bodies. Because whenever there's a death, death is the ultimate cell damage. These microorganisms start working very, very quickly. That's why every dead body will test positive to viruses, yeast and fungus, because the cycle of life has begun. That's why when my daughter's neighbour in late 2020 A 12-year-old boy died. He fell into a flooded creek and his clothes got caught and he died. The ambulance came and on the death certificate they said died of COVID. And the parents were very upset. They said he was dead when you arrived, he drowned. They said, well, we tested him and he was positive. Well, every dead body will be because the cycle of life has begun. You see that? What are they testing dead bodies for? That's why it is of the utmost importance to understand the cycle of life and its role in disease. Florence Nightingale and the effect that she had with just cleaning. Some would say she's fanatical. She cleaned and cleaned back. Can you be too fussy in a sick room? Within 2 months, the death rate went from 50% to 2%. All she did was turn the tap off. And if you don't turn the tap off, you're still going to be mopping up in the other corner. She cleaned. She got her nurses to clean. And so there was not much for these guys to do. If someone has a bacterial or yeast, fungus, virus problem in their body, the detective hat has to be put on. Why? Why is it there? We've got to get away from the kill mentality. Because anything that can kill a small organism has the potential to kill a large. And what are we? The large. Antoine Beauchamp. Before I explain him a little bit more, I'll just tell you the end of Florence Nightingale's story. When she came back to London 14 months later, she looked at the side of the boat and she saw on the wharf a welcoming party, welcoming her as a heroine. Queen Victoria and Prince Albert were there. She changed her name to Mary Smith, went down the back gangplank and went home. They said to her later, why did you do that? She said, I'm not a heroine. She said, all I did was increase hygiene, sanitation and nutrition. Did everyone get that? Hygiene, that's personal hygiene. Wash your body every day. Wash your clothes every day. As you'll see tomorrow when we look at detoxification and the organs of elimination, we are constantly eliminating waste from our body. And if we don't get the waste out of our body, guess what? These guys are going to have to come along and clean it up. Just like the hospital. Florence Nightingale made similar reforms in Indian hospitals. And nursing today is based on that. Unfortunately, instead of scrubbing and cleaning, they just use disinfectants. Kill. And so when they were insisting that you sanitise before you go places, I'd do a little bit of pretend and walk in like this. And then everyone thinks you've done it because I don't want this kill mentality. Because when you kill the microorganisms, the body adapts and adjusts. What do you think golden staph is? It's just bacteria that's been killed with the drug. So you know what it does? It just adjusts and adapts. Now they haven't got anything that'll kill. If the human body was designed to heal itself, we just need to know how it does it. We need to know the role of these microbes and work with them. Antoine Beauchamp got a dead cat one day and wrapped it in an airtight container. Now I'm going to give you an Australian example of what happens to a dead cat. Maybe the cat fell off out of a tree or something and it dies. What happens to dead cat? Well, the dingo will come and do a nibble, the kookaburra and the crow will have a nibble. The scavengers come along. The blowfly will lay its eggs and maggots will come out. Dung beetles and worms come up. Aren't they the scavengers? And they are all contributing to the breaking down of matter, bringing it back to dust. But Antoine Beauchamp wrapped his dead cat in an airtight container. No dingo, no kookaburra, no worms, no dung beetles. After 4 months, he opened the container that had the dead cat, dust. So what brought cat matter back to dust? The microorganisms that were an integral part of living, running cat took their suit of clothes off, so to speak, put their rubber gloves and apron on and became the trash collectors, the clean-up team. As the environment changed, they became the exterminators. As the environment changed, the undertakers, until they brought matter back to dust. It's the cycle of life. It's the carbon cycle. Nothing's created, nothing's destroyed. It just changes form. With great excitement, Antoine Beauchamp got the dust. He put it under the microscope. It was alive with microorganisms. Nothing's created, nothing's destroyed. Now those microorganisms are in the soil. Now they play another role. So this is why an organic garden has compost bins. I have 3 compost bins. 1 compost bin I'm adding to. Putting the scraps, putting the weeds from the garden in. They're great because they aerate it. If you got chooks, maybe. In fact, I was at a house just last week and they got rabbits. It's great in the compost. The only time that horse or cow or chook droppings are not good is if they've been given chemicals. But even then, the microbes can break that up. And so that's my compost bin. I've got 3. 1 I'm adding to. 1 is sitting, allowing the cycle of life to bring the matter back to dust. The 3rd compost bin, it's back to dust, it's earth. I've got a photograph of me squatting in my compost bin with a handful, earth. It's ready for the garden. So before I put another crop in, I put compost into the garden. What am I putting in the garden? I'm putting microorganisms. These microorganisms in the soil are responsible for the breakdown of the minerals in the soil, making them available for the roots of the plant. Aren't you glad we don't have to eat dirt to get our minerals? Well, if you've ever had a baby that eats dirt, when you change the diaper the next day, what's there? Dirt. Just goes straight through. These microorganisms break down the minerals in the soil. They are responsible for the absorption of these minerals into the plant. These microorganisms also protect the plant. They play a role of protection. These microorganisms help to nourish the plant. Now that plant knows that it needs those microbes. So 50% of the fuel that it makes from photosynthesis, it sends back down to the roots to feed the microbes. Beautiful illustration to show that the law of service is written on every plant in nature. Every plant in nature takes with one aim: to give. And this is why organically grown fruits and vegetables have a far higher mineral contents, because of the activity in the soil. Let me give you another illustration. We've got an apple tree and blossoms are coming under the action of microorganisms. Then an apple develops under the action of microorganisms, but the apple's not ready to eat. It must ripen. What ripens it? The same microorganisms. They change roles. No one eats the apple. What happens to the apple? It rots. The skin's intact. Nothing went in to make it rot. The same microorganisms that cause the development, that cause the ripening, will cause the rotting, to bring the matter back to dust. That's why we've got these wonderful senses called smell. Smell tells you, ooh, not going to eat that. Ah, that smells good. It's the cycle of life. Can you see that these aren't their enemies? They are the players in the cycle of life. We change roles all through life. I'm not dressed now the way I was dressed in Germany 2 weeks ago, where it was 6 degrees Celsius in the morning. I'm not dressed now the way I was dressed on my morning walk running through the hills. I'm not dressed now the way I dressed when I did my quick dip into the river every morning. I'm not dressed now the way I dressed while I was sleeping last night. I'm not dressed now the way I was dressed in Africa 6 weeks ago. We change roles, don't we? We change roles according to the environment, according to the needs. So do the microbes. I'm not dressed now the way I was dressed when I was 6 months old. I'm not dressed now the way I was dressed when I was 5 years of age. So this adaptation process is all through nature and absolutely in the microbes. Let me give you an illustration. We've got 2 cousins, or 2 brothers I should say. Healthy Harry, sick Steve. Healthy Harry is a surfer, he's a landscaper, he exercises, doesn't drink, doesn't smoke. And then we've got sick Steve. He's the brother. He thinks Healthy Harry is so boring. Doesn't drink, doesn't smoke. Healthy Harry doesn't like drinking water, it's so boring. He just drinks coffee. He's a smoker. What's happening in the lungs with the smoke? Damage. Who's going to come and clean up the damage? Here they are. What does the smoker cough up? Oh, very interesting colours, yellow, green. You see, in response to this, then our immune system, the white blood cells come along. Cousin Colin visits, and he's got a bad cold. Have you seen what happens when someone sneezes? All these little droplets come out. They come all over Cousin Colin because they shake hands. Sorry, mate. You like it when people sneeze all over you and then say sorry? And these little microbes, which are active in a cold, they jump on sick Steve and they say, feast! What's the feast? The damage done in the back of the tongue, in the throat, the trachea, the lungs. Because that cigarette smoke is a toxic poison doing constant damage to those little fine membranes. Feast! So by the end of the day, how does sick Steve feel? Sick. He says this is what we say in Australia, that rotten cousin of mine, he's given me his wog, given me his bug. Do you say that? Got a bug from cousin Colin. He goes to his favourite doctor. He took him a while to find this doctor. Not every doctor is like this. But he loves this doctor because the doctor never asks uncomfortable questions like, are you still smoking? Are you drinking water? He says, hi, Steve, when will it be this time? And he's got his pen and his pad. He listens to the chest. Oh, there's a party going on in there. Take this, what's it called? Take this antibiotic and it will make you well, yeah? Oh, how Steve loves this doctor. What does antibiotic mean? It means against life. And anything that has the ability to kill a small organism has the potential to kill the large, and that's what we are. Let's look at Healthy Harry. He comes in the room, so we're going back to Cousin Colin's first visit, shakes his hand, jumps on Healthy Harry. Do you know there's nothing to do? Because there's no cell damage. And so Healthy Harry doesn't even get a sniffle. Have you noticed when the cold rose goes round? Some do, some don't. But let's say that Healthy Harry's just been on a surfing trip to Hawaii, in the plane a lot, breathing in not great fumes, couldn't get as good a food as usual, lack of sleep. Oh, lack of sleep can certainly contribute to disease. So there's a little bit of damage there. See, we've got these wonderful things in our throat called tonsils. And do you know that they are part of your lymphatic system and they throw waste into your throat? So when you cough up those bits and pieces, praise God, it's your lymphatic system sweeping the waste away. Trust your body, it's an amazing organism. And if you cough up lumps, rejoice. So there's a little bit of a sore throat comes to healthy Harry by the end of the day. So he calls the SWAT team in. What's the SWAT team? Goes to the gym, does a steam sauna, dives in the cool pool, back in the steam sauna. We'll look at water therapies later in the week. Decides not to have tea, or you call it supper, that night. Mixes himself a flu bomb. We'll look at the flu bomb. Ginger, garlic, eucalyptus oil, cayenne pepper, lemon honey. Throws that down. Goes to bed. Piles the blankets up. When he wakes up in the morning, he's wet with perspiration. He's very happy. He obviously had a bit of a fever in the night. Fantastic tool of God for healing is the fever. But he was well hydrated, so the brain was okay. Gets up, has a glass of water, goes to the bathroom, eliminates waste that way, comes back, gets dressed, has another glass of water, puts his joggers on, goes for a run up through the hills, breathing deeply, coughing up a few lumps here and there. Praise God for those tonsils, getting rid of that waste. Comes back, has a hot and cold shower, or has another glass of water when he gets back. Finishes his shower with cold, wonderful tonic effect. Has breakfast, feeling quite good now. Has some fruit. Then he has his antibiotic sandwich, sourdough spelt toast, olive oil, whole crushed clove of garlic over the slice, avocado, tomatoes, very nice. I had a few of those when I had my cold. Goes to work. No one comes near him that day because he's got this barrier around him that's just about disinfecting everyone that comes near him. Let's look at sick Steve. He wakes up in the morning sick. You had a question?
Well, yeah, I don't know about Australia, but here they always take the tonsils out.
Yes, yeah. The question is, do they take the tonsils out in Australia? Oh, yes. I gave birth to 6, and also when I married my husband 25 years ago, he had 2, and all our children have their tonsils because God doesn't make a mistake, and the tonsils are not a mistake. You know what the tonsils are? Watchmen at the gate. And when they start screaming at you, what do? Cut them out? No, you haven't got a watchman at the gate. What you've got to find out is, why are they swollen? Why are they screaming at you? They're a wonderful organ that causes us to eliminate waste very easily straight out through our respiratory. Often when you have that little cough and cough up a little lump, it's from your tonsils. When you see that, you say, thank you, Father in heaven. I'm glad that's out. How did it come in? Well, so many ways. When I fly, I'm getting it. You know, if you're not eating all organic food, it's just in so many areas. So let's look at sick Steve now. Sick Steve is sick. He goes and gets his antibiotic, comes home, shuts all the windows, don't want to draft. Has some scotch, Jack Daniels. Oh, that seems to clear things a bit. Within a few days, he's feeling okay. The antibiotics, you know, the antibiotics, they're like dropping an atomic bomb in the body. The good and the bad alike go. But he's got this terrible rash. He's got this jock itch. Because you know what an antibiotic is? It's a mould waste. How many people take an antibiotic and then get thrush? Alexander Fleming, 1929, he's growing bacteria in flasks in his laboratory, comes in one morning, all the bacteria are dead. So in Newton's third law of motion, to every action there's an equal and an opposite reaction. Why did his bacteria die? Nothing in the laboratory could have done it. He looked out the window and he saw up top there was an open window and the sun was coming in and there was a heavy dust and it was settling on his bacteria. He looked up in the window and there was a plate of fruit and there's a mouldy orange. So Alexander Fleming called the mould penicillium. Do you remember the story from school days? In fact, he got a Nobel Prize for his discovery. He called the mould waste penicillic acid, and the penicillic acid is the penicillin that we know today. Every mould has several mould wastes. And so this is why Sick Steve had such a terrible case of jockage. He couldn't sleep, it was all so itchy, so another couple of Jack Daniels knocked him out. Woke in the morning, he's just bleeding. He'd scratched so badly. So he goes to the doc and he says, "What are you back for, Steve?" He says, "Oh, the cold's better, but look." Ooh. So what he gives him is some, because he knows it's fungus. He knows. So he gives him some antifungal cream, cortisone cream to stop the itch. Do you know, it just masks the problem. Tonight, we're going to have a look at what happened to Sick Steve, because 5 years later, he's coughing up blood and he has cancer. And what you'll discover tonight is cancer often has a fungal component.
Has a what?
Fungal component. They were so excited about the discovery of penicillin that they tested hundreds of different mould wastes. So this is the mould waste, is the penicillic acid. 80% of them were so deadly they killed the rats. So penicillin is not deadly enough to kill you outright, but it certainly can contribute. I'm not against antibiotics. They've saved lives. They are saving lives, and they will. The human body can cope with about 2 courses in a lifetime. Did you get that? It should be kept as only life-saving. Now, as we go through this week and we look at natural remedies, you will see why I raised 8 children with no antibiotics, and they're all still alive. And they're raising their children without antibiotics. Because the body can heal itself, it just needs the right conditions. Many people are unaware of those basic conditions needed for healing. Now remember the flu bomb that Healthy Harry took? And it had garlic in it? You know, garlic is a natural antibiotic. It's powerful. Yeah, your friends mightn't like you for the day, but at least you're getting well. So to date, they've tested 5 million different moulds, yeasts and funguses. And my husband, who's my biggest critique, and I'm glad, because if I pass Michael, I'll pass anyone. He says, "That's too much, I don't believe you." I said, "Check it out. 50 million. So there's a huge amount of moulds and mould waste. One common one that many people have heard of is the mould aspergillus, and it gives off the mould waste aflatoxin. And China study, Dr. Colin Campbell will look at that tonight. He discovered that it was the aflatoxin in the peanut butter that was causing children in the Philippines to die from liver cancer between the age of 8 and 10 years of age. You see, peanut's not a nut, it's a legume. It grows in the ground. And the problem in Australia is 75% of Australians live in the city, so all their food's grown in the country. So it's harvested, it's put into big silos. You get a cold, frosty morning and a hot, sunny day. What's building up in the silo is moisture, which feeds mould. And there was one silo like this. This is a true story. It was in the newspaper, and a friend of mine met the wife of the man that it happened to. There was water leakage in this silo. So they took all the mouldy grain out, And not even the pigs would eat it. Do they know something we don't? They even put molasses on it and the pigs still wouldn't touch it. Pigs, they seem to eat anything. So they took the mouldy grain out. They're best to just dig a hole and let the cycle of life bring it back to dust. And there was white covering the lining of the silo. What's the white? It's mould. And these 3 men had to chip it off, to fix the roof and chip it off. 2 of the men said, we're going to get covered for this. We're going to get some protective clothing on. The 3rd man said, I don't need protective clothing. I'll just get into it. So he went in with his shovel while the other men went. When the other men came back, they looked like they were about to walk on Mars. They had breathing, they were totally covered. And when they went into the silo, their friend was lying on the ground dead. Now what was this, 10 minutes? When he'd put his shovel into that mold, the dust came. He breathed it in, it went in through his pores, he swallowed, and basically his body had an anaphylactic shock to this toxic poison. And he died. Eesh. So be cautious of mould. There should be no mould in our house. And the worst thing to clean mould with is bleach. Bleach will kill the mould, but it'll feed fungus. You watch, when you kill something with mould, you look a couple of weeks later, what have you got? You got the next crop of mould. So what will kill mould? White vinegar. White vinegar will kill it, but it won't kill you. And when mould and fungus come together, mould and bleach, it creates a very toxic mix. So I was reading of a chemist that did some experiments on mould, and this was in the Bronx, and it was in a high-rise apartment block that had a leaky bathroom, and I think the room under it had a mouldy wall. So what he did, he got the people to clean half of the wall with bleach and the other half of the wall with white vinegar, and when they cleaned it with white vinegar, then they had to wipe it over with a cloth that had clove essential oil in it. Shut the room up, they'd already fixed the leak. He opened it up 2 weeks later, and the part of the wall that had been cleaned with mould was just as cleaned with bleach was just as mouldy again. But the other half that had had the white vinegar and the clove oil, it hadn't regrown. So even though bleach might seem like the answer, it's actually not. It'll feed the next crop, and what you breathe in when you're cleaning is very toxic. And my daughter lives in Wisconsin. She said, this was in the newspaper, Mum, that a lady cleaned a mouldy bathroom with bleach and they found her dead. Now, many people clean mouldy bathrooms with bleach. I think it was very mouldy. She used a lot of bleach and every window and door was shut. And so it was just basic overload. And yet when you look at many medications that medicine use today, they have a mould basis. Again, I'm not against antibiotics. They have and will continue to save lives. But ideally, we nip it in the bud. We take steps to hear, as soon as we hear this first whisper, we start to act, to give the body the conditions for healing. And there will be healing. That's the good news. So tonight, I'm going to explore this a little bit more to the point of showing you the link between this and cancer. And we're also going to be looking at how you can eradicate it from the body. So I can answer a few questions before we close, yes?
What if you have a heart condition and you're supposed to take antibiotics before dinner? Like, that'll work.
What if you have a heart condition and you're supposed to take antibiotics before dental work? Do you know it's just in case? It's just in case. You can have dental work without the antibiotic. What you can take if you want to be doubly cautious is a natural antibiotic. The dentist mightn't like it if you've had huge amounts of garlic. But you can take olive leaf extract. 1 teaspoon of olive leaf extract 3 times a day. And if they say to you, have you taken an antibiotic? You say, I have taken a natural or a herbal antibiotic, or even just to say you've taken the antibiotic. That it can. And often a biological dentist is more open to you having it naturally. It's like a man from Malaysia, he texted me, he had a very bad cut on his knee and it was 2 inches long and I could see it was ½ an inch deep. He said, what'll I do? I said, well, I think I'd stitch that. That looks quite deep. And it's also in a functional area. You know, every time you use your knee, it would open. He said, they're insisting that I have antibiotics and a tetanus shot. And I said to him, I wouldn't. But he said, they say I'll get tetanus. I said, no, you won't. You see, there's many times it's given just in case. It's called prophylactically. But the World Health Organization today has issued a warning. They said the biggest healthcare risk today is the overuse of antibiotics. That's from the World Health Organization. So if your dentist challenges you, you can say, I'm just going with the World Health Organization, that is warning against this overuse of antibiotics to the point where someone is really sick, they're not working. Because remember what the microbes do, they adapt and adjust. They adapt and adjust so much that it's actually not having its effect. Yes?
When you were talking about tonsils, if I'm hearing you right, you're saying leave them if at all possible and find out what's causing them. Are some of us born with larger tonsils than others? And if so, like what would be causing them?
It appears that some people are born with larger tonsils than others. One of the biggest problems, well, there's a few problems. One is mouth breathing. Did you know we're not supposed to breathe through our mouths? In Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, the Bible says, and God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils. Got that? Nostrils, the breath of life. Mouth is for singing, talking, laughing, wind instruments. Mouth is not for breathing. So when I had the cold a couple of weeks ago, I did not breathe through my mouth. I had a tissue and kept blowing my nose to keep it clear. The more you breathe through your nose, the wider the little tunnels at the back get. So when you mouth breathe, you're taking in dirty, unpurified air. And that can irritate the tonsils and make them a little larger. But you've also got mucus-forming foods. Many people have dairy allergies and will have big tonsils from that. Many people have wheat allergies. We'll explore that more this week. Peanuts, commonly contaminated with mould. If you love peanut butter, I've got some good news. Try almond or cashew butter, just as nice. And also the refined sugar. What does refined sugar do to these guys? Oh, just feeds it. It's his favourite food. So can you see there can be a few reasons? Yes?
How can we solve the breathing through mouth problem?
How can we solve the breathing through mouth problem? Did you know that if you find your nose clogged up a little bit, the best way to clear it is to breathe through the nose? The more you breathe through the nose, the more they will open. And you can sleep with your mouth taped up. Now you don't have to put tape like this. You can just put a little bit of tape under the nose to the chin. So if it is stretched, you could go like that. But what you can do is to get yourself used to it, is wear that little bit of tape for maybe, half an hour through the day, for a few days before you sleep with it overnight. But the more you force nose breathing, the easier it gets and the more those little tunnels at the back will open. That's the good news. Well, thank you very much for your attention today. I'm very impressed that everyone's still awake. And tonight we're going to be looking at the causes of cancer and also how you can give the body the right conditions for the healing of cancer. So I look forward to seeing you tonight. And tomorrow morning we're looking at the detoxification process. I'll just get my sheet here. I think it's detoxification and also organs of elimination. And tomorrow night, boosting the immune system and the respiratory organs. So when we look at the respiratory organs, we're going to be looking a little bit more at the tonsils and the lungs and the sinus and the full effect of nose breathing. So thank you, and I look forward to seeing you tonight.